Hi everyone, how's it going? I'm Mr. MKL. We are here for the Indie Fighting Game Fest week, and in order to celebrate a bit of that, I'm going to be talking to some folks involved in the development of these lovely indie fighting games. And today I am joined by Alan McMillian, who is the artist working on MegaKnockdown. Alan, how you doing?
Hi, thanks for having me on.
Happy to have you here. We oftentimes hear from our developers when it comes to this. I try to make a point of talking to as many of the people, working on the nuts and bolts of these games. And it's something we often forget that, there are a ton of artists out there working on these games, whether they be musicians or visual artists. And so I thought today was a good opportunity to kind of shine a light on some of the artists working on these games. And so I was hoping that you'd be able to take us through a little bit of what it's like, what your history as an artist has been, and how it led you to fighting games, and eventually Mega Knockdown.
Well, I've been drawing ever since I could pick up a pencil. Basically, I started doodling when I was 5, and I kept with it. It was at the risk of being a little dark. It was a hobby that kept me sane through some of the darker periods of not the greatest childhood, but it was a thing that I don't think I had a natural talent for it. I just did it so much that I accrued enough skill at it to where people are willing to apparently pay money for it now. So woohoo! I originally wanted to get into comics, and I tried to break into the industry for a while. And well, you will never find a more wretched hive of scum and villainy than independent comics. Imagine all the worst stories you hear about game developers, but imagine they're all fighting for a smaller piece of the pie. I realized that the industry wasn't interested in being any better, and I wasn't interested in working in the industry as it was. So I started fishing around for something to do, and I've been a fighting game fan for as long as I've been a fan of, well, comic fan of drawing. Probably the a watershed moment for me was discovering when Capcom started doing cartoonish style art in their fighting games, starting with Darkstalkers and Street Fighter Alpha. That was a moment where I realized these are playable cartoons. These are the experiences that you get from animation, but they are interactive. That is the kind of game that I want to make. And you mentioned that artists kind of get tossed to the wayside or their contributions get ignored. And it's a little bit like in any other medium, the visuals, the music would be the centerpieces. But in a in a video game, they are a little bit like the rhythm section of a game of a band. They're the thing that creates the world that enables you to get sucked in so that you can enjoy the gameplay. And if they're not holding up there, and it doesn't matter how good the vocalist or the lead guitarist is, if you don't have a strong backbeat behind it. So that's, I think, kind of what explains that phenomena. It was something that I always wanted to do, and as I gravitated away from comics, it became more and more something that was interesting to me.
So, from a little bit of like disillusionment with the independent comics world, and then realizing that hey, there's this avenue of I can express myself in a in a medium that you also love, right? That was the shift from comics to video games. Have you had any previous, prior to Mega Knockdown, had you had any experience working on games, or is this kind of your first foray into it?
It is. I am totally a fresh fish. I had experimented with animation in little ways over the years. I had developed a style that was very heavily influenced by cartoon animation. I used in my comics work. I did a lot of cell shading. It felt natural to me. It felt like where my style wanted to go. That made the transition over into working in animation, where you have to do that kind of cell shaded work, much easier because you're already designing simplified characters. Which designing simplified characters is what you have to do as an animator, so that you don't, make everybody else who's working on your staff absolutely bonkers. From there, I played around with a few prototypes, but I realized that this was not going to be something that I could do as a solo developer. I just didn't. I just didn't have the skill set, and I'm also 45 years old, and there's that thing about old dogs and new tricks. So at a certain point, you start fishing around to see if you can help somebody, if you can find somebody to help you uh, find your way into this world.
All right. And I guess this is a good time to introduce dHamster to the conversation.
Well, this is one of the best stories about the development of this game, and I'd been sniffing around the independent uh, fighting game scene for a little bit. At first, I was trying to see if I could organize a team around an independent project that I wanted to do, something that I had design work for, but didn't have any other support for. I started talking to people, and what I realized was that, well, nobody's going to work on my project because everybody else has a project of their own that they're trying to get off the ground. Around the same time, I had posted something on Twitter about the idea of a fighting game that that completely removed uh, the execution barrier, something that was completely RPS, and how would it work? And I had gotten into a conversation with Pathavma, who's the dev working on the I'm blanking on
Castang
the name of the
engine.
game. Yeah,
Yes, the Castang engine, as
because
well as Cronian Titans, the game. Yeah. Mhm.
around about the same time, I noticed that somebody had responded to the Twitter thread and said, "Hey, what about this?" And it was a link to the Steam trailer for MegaKnockdown. And I looked at it and went, better than what I had imagined. And that's what I replied. I said, "This is actually better than what I imagined it would be. Now I just need to find out if they have an artist." And the response I got back, and this is while I'm on Twitter talking to this guy, and I'm on Discord talking to Pathavma, and on Twitter, the response I get back is, "No, I don't." And it was actually it was actually David, and that's where we got started talking, and we got into DMs. And at the same time, Pathavma says, "Yeah, I'm going to be a little bit busy over the next week because we're getting ready for this thing called the Niche Fighter Fate, where they're going to try to raise money to hire an artist for this game called MegaKnockdown." This is happening at the exact same time that I'm on Twitter talking to David about being the artist on MegaKnockdown. And I said, I think I smelled burnt toast. Um,
Like how serendipitous, right?
it almost goes beyond serendipity. At this point, there was about a week before the fate came in, and I said, "Hey, look, if you want to bring me on to do this," David had already said he was not going to be available to be actively involved. I said, "Look, if you want to bring me on to do this, what if I create some concept art and a piece of key art, something that showcases the characters?" And that week, I experienced what in the video game industry is called crunch for the first time, because taking a look at what had been done, taking a look at what I thought we could do and what we wanted to do, and then getting it all approved by David before the fate went live, I was running on adrenaline. Basically for the whole week. It's like I would work, I would come home, and I would sit down and just art. And even when I was, at work, this was in the back of my brain going, "Okay, what do I do with this? And how do I change this character? And how is this going to work?" And I didn't even have all the character designs completed when that uh, thing was finished. I mean, there was a reason why you only saw Dr. Flaskin's head in the piece.
Yeah.
But I thought, okay, this is a Capcom style mishmash piece, so this could work. And it's got what I call the Mark One versions of some of the characters in there. The version of uh, Jane that's in that piece isn't exactly what we got because she went through some changes as the sprite work developed. We got it all done. I got it done the day before the fate was supposed to start, and that's when I got it off. And then I was there when I wasn't working. I was tuned into the various streams, just trying to make sure that there was a presence there because David couldn't be there. And from that point, we hit the ground running, and we've been working on it ever since.
That's amazing. I didn't actually realize it was in such close succession. You know, it was just like mere days later, really, that the Fed was
Mhm.
happening. So yeah, that's a super quick turnaround time. And also the first time your first real experience in the video game industry, and already get to enjoy that crunch. Well, nothing like it.
At least I can't say I've never gone through it before,
Yeah.
so I know what to expect next time.
Yeah. Well, hopefully things have calmed down a little bit in the development of Mega Knockdown. Actually, we haven't really gone over it. Like from the words of someone who's working on the game, what is Mega Knockdown all about?
This is the tagline that I would use, which needs to be workshopped. But the tagline, I would say it's the fighting game for people who suck at fighting games. But I would also say that it's a game that, whenever I think about it, and I cannot praise David Hamstead enough for just what he was able to accomplish on his own. Whenever I think about where Mega Knockdown was when I came aboard, I'll always picture that scene in Iron Man where Obadiah Stane is screaming at one of the Stark technicians, going, "Tony Stark built this in a cave with a box of scraps." Because that's what he did. He built a fully functioning game that not only was workable, but was fun enough to where it built its own audience, and it got enough support to where people like you were willing to get behind it and try to make it into something that was the full fighting game experience rather than just this sort of experimental oddity or singularity. It is odd, but for entirely other reasons that you guys don't even know. He grabbed he got a hold of the brass ring before I even walked in the room. So, and the fact that he has been so open and willing to allow me to come into this thing that has been his baby, and just I've had an enormous amount of creative freedom in terms of how I design the characters, how I express their characterization through animation, through design, through developing their personalities, and changing things that were kind of locked in. Um, I know that if I ever have another job in the industry, it's never going to be this good. This will probably be the if I have a career in the industry, this will probably be the one experience I look back on and go, wow, it's never been that good.
No, I was because there's something to be said about working with somebody on, their passion project and them trusting you to that you understand what it's all about and that you're able to, work within what David's put together and then add your own flair to it to make it, better than the sum of its parts in some ways.
I have to sometimes remind myself that in the end, I'm a contractor. I'm somebody who was brought on to do a job. The job was far more expansive than just simply doing the art, but it is still something that is wholly David's contribution or wholly David's creation. And my job, as I see it, is not simply to make uh, attractive illustrations, but to create to take the core of this thing that David has created and make what I guess I call the entire fighting game experience, which is something that encompasses the art, the music, sound effects, not just the core gameplay, but the thing that makes us all love fighting games, whether we're good at them or not.
One of the reasons why I really was attracted to Mega Knockdown as a concept is that it's really interesting in terms of a fighting game conceptually, a turn-based fighting game. Has roots as a card game, and then how do you make it more interactive and more video gamey? That's an entirely fascinating process, right? But then it had this Jerma green screen, cut out digitized art, and while that has its own charm, and I think there's value to that. It would be easy to dismiss Mega Knockdown as the Jerma meme game, right? And it is so much more than that. What do you, as an artist, what are you aiming to bring to the table to make it so much more than just a Jerma meme game?
Well, what I hope to bring, because I'm of the belief that you can call yourself an artist, but you can't really call what you create art. Other people decide whether what you create is art. So whether I'm successful in this endeavor or not, it depends entirely on the reaction of others. But what my goal has always been is to do this, the thing you do with any story, which is to create a world that people can fall into. You want to create something that totally engages the suspension of disbelief. Fighting games have an interesting way of doing that. I'm a big one of my big influences is ABI Toriel, or the ABI Torials. One of the things he preaches is that fighting game characters are unique in that they have to, from the jump, from the initial design, tell you everything you need to know about that character, because you're going to get them for about 5 seconds on the character select screen the first time you plug into the game. That's going to be your introduction to the character, and you have to decide whether you want to play that character or not. And what I wanted to do was, for one, in the approach to redesigning the characters, create characters that could do that, that could tell you everything you needed to know about them just by looking at them. Some of the work had been done for me, some of it I had to accentuate, and some of it I did have to just chuck. The other part of it is that there is actually a story behind MegaKnockdown. There's internal lore to the world, and it was only sort of partially developed. It was a collection of sort of uncoordinated thoughts. My job was to take all of that and knit it into a cohesive world, something that felt fully realized, and then have that inform the elements of the art, everything from the graphic design to the uh, character animation to menu selection, which we're doing massive overhauls on. We're going to end up massively overhauling pretty much everything by the time it's done. This isn't even really version one. And David and I don't always agree on everything, but he's a terrific collaborator in that we can always come to an agreement about what we can move forward with. And it's on me in a lot of ways to know when to go, all right, this is not how I want to do it, but this is his baby, and I have to step back. And there's a lot of times where I can make a compelling case. Big example of that is, losing the name Flatskin. I think Flynn was streaming on his channel, and two or three of the guys who he was playing the game with were, kept calling her Dr. Foreskin. And I said, this is not going to work. This is just, we don't want this hanging over our heads. And I I had to pester David about it until he finally gave in. I do feel bad about that, but I think it was a better decision for the game. When all the pieces finally come together, uh, it's little decisions like that are going to make it a more, I think, polished and presentable and overall accessible project. Uh, because you kind of chuck the things that would knock you out of the experience.
You said that you're working on things including the HUD elements and the menu elements, and you're
Mhm.
trying to bring in aspects of the lore and the world that is being created to inform that. I, for one, am a huge fan of developers and artists who lean really heavily into like their core aesthetic informing those kind of elements as well. Like you said, it's something that keeps you in the experience, keeps you in that world. Um, and I know that there is an update for MegaKnockdown that is going to incorporate some of these HUD changes. Would you mind going over some of them and kind of what that inspiration was and what it was that informed the design of the new elements?
We went back and forth on this. I wanted to go full Jamie Hewlett Tank Girl, kind of almost rural grunge
Okay.
look for it. and David kept pulling me back from that. We had a lot of discussions about what the underlying themes of the game were, and what we realized was that it was a meta commentary on the FGC itself. You have this group of friends that you would get together, because I'm old enough to remember the arcade experience. You would have this group of friends that you would get together with, and you would mess with them and you would joke around right up until you put your quarter on the machine. And at that point, it was two guys stepping into the ring, and you were going to trash talk, and you were just going to be as macho as you possibly could. And then when it was over, you could walk away and you could still be friends. And that's kind of if you look at some of the in-game discussions, in-game conversations, you get the sense that these are all people who live in a small community, who are all, in a way, if not friends, they're neighbors, they're associates, they can't get too far away from each other. They're all kind of stuck in this little area, which plays very heavily into the story because the entire thing takes place in a small town. But it was a commentary on the FGC itself. And so we thought, you know what, my thinking was, all right, you know what, the whole thing just needs to look like it's somebody's Twitch channel. We wanted it to have that feel, or that was the feel that I was going for, because that was the commentary on the game itself, and that provides the visual vocabulary of what we're going for. Then, as far as the rest of it goes, a lot of it we're finding on the fly. We're constantly iterating on the visual elements of it, especially now that we've got all the basic animations in for each character. And I'm starting the process of doing the what's called the in-betweens and the tie-downs to finalize the animation.
And I gotta say, it is shaping up extremely well. When I first saw the game, David reached out to me, I feel like it was almost 2 years ago, maybe a year and a half ago. And was like, hey, you should check this out. You're into the fighting game stuff, right? And at that point, it was like developer menus, right? Like there was no real like player UX. You could see it was like, okay, you got the Jerma stuff, it's the developer stuff. I know it's super, super early, but like I didn't see initially the kind of overall design vision, right? And the overall story vision even. Having spoken to David and having the game gone into further development, you see those things coming out. And so, yeah, seeing all this art that really brings that stuff to life, because like you said, there is a deep like internal lore to the game. And it stretches back to David doing, like comedy podcasts or like narrative podcasts and stuff like that with a group of friends. So there is this whole, if you wanted to get like the season 0 of MegaKnockdown, there's some podcasts out there. So where does it go from here, I guess, is the big question.
MegaKnockdown, as it is like chapter 1 of a multi-part story. And if we can get the support from the community, and more specifically from the financially, then we want to tell the rest of the story. Because one of the things we are definitely doing is we're overhauling the endings so that they tie more tightly into the final story. David did not have the resources to design the character who would essentially be the final antagonist until I came aboard. Now that we have his design and we have sort of a blueprint for where the story can go, our main focus right now is just getting version 1 ready to view, and getting all the bells and whistles on that one, getting it polished up and getting it ready to look at. And the rest is going to depend like on a lot of things, on whether or not it finds an audience sufficiently big enough to support expanding it outward. I know there's a lot of things I would like to do, and I've actually got like a whole stretch of mini comics in my head that I would like to do about it, but I'm not sure where I'm going to find the time. Can't say exactly where the future is going to take, and a lot of that is going to depend on how well. A lot of that is going to depend on how well I've done my job as someone who takes the core of what David's created and builds the world around it sufficient to where people want to keep revisiting it.
I really appreciate you taking your time to talk with me about all this stuff. Mega Knockdown is an excellent, excellent fighting game, both from from a technical perspective, from like a design perspective. I think it's really interesting, and it also offers a lot just from the world that it's building and the characters that are on offer. So, thank you for putting your own spin on that and helping to bring those to life. Where should people be looking out for you and for Mega Knockdown going forward for all the new updates and everything else?
Well, you definitely want to be checking out the Mega Knockdown Twitter account. You want to be checking out the Mega Knockdown website, because as the game progresses further, we're going to have additional, uh, possibly story related content added that kind of fleshes out the world. Um, uh, if you're interested in supporting the project, we have a Patreon. One of the top tier rewards in Patreon, and I don't know if anybody knows this yet, is that if you subscribe to the highest tier Patreon that we have, you actually get to be a character in one of the backgrounds. Some of the backgrounds we've got planned are going to be uh, stuff you will definitely not have seen coming.
Fantastic. Well, thank you, Alan. I really appreciate you taking your time and chatting about Mega Knockdown with me today.
Well, I thank you. I thank you for really all the support. I mean, I wouldn't be here if you guys hadn't decided to band together and put the Niche Fighter Fate together. Um, and I wouldn't have had this opportunity, and it's changed my life in a lot of ways. And again, big thanks to David Hamstead for just you know being one of being just about the best creative collaborative partner that anybody could ask for. And if anybody gets a chance to work with him on anything, take it, because you will not at all regret um, the level of support you will get from him on your end of the process.
Folks, this is Mr. MKL. We are, like I said, we're doing this for the Indie Fighting Game Fest that's happening on Steam right now between the 13th of April and the 17th of April. So make sure you go check out all of the amazing indie game devs and indie creators out there. And yeah, enjoy yourself some fighting games and support your indies. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you, Alan.
Thank you.